Meanwhile, in Russia, this is not fitting with that music, but a far-right ultra-nationalist, essentially propagandist, Daria Dugina, was killed by a car bomb outside, in the outskirts of Moscow, excuse me. She was the daughter of an influential Russian political theorist who's often referred to as Putins Brain. And she was killed in a car bombing on the outskirts of Moscow, officials said Sunday. Here's a photo of her. Again, that's Daria Dugina. She was 29 years old. The bomb was planted in an SUV driven by Dugina, and it exploded Saturday night and killed the TV commentator, who again was this daughter of Alexander Dugin, a nationalist philosopher and writer, and that is the man who's always referred to as the brain of Putin. Also, a little bit of the Bannon of Putin, and Bannon, by the way, huge admirer of Dugin. This is a very, very brazen attack. The Russian state television described the car bombing as that occurred on Saturday evening on a highway and shattered the windows of nearby houses in an affluent Moscow suburb as a terrorist act, and said the intended target had been Mr. Dugin. It ended up killing his daughter instead because he had taken a different car at the last minute, according to Russian news reports. On Thursday, 2 days before her death, Ms. Dugina argued on a state television talk show that, quote, the Western man lives in a dream that he got from his global hegemony. That is one of the more benign things she has said, but again, the apple did not fall far from the tree in this case. When I first heard about this story, I thought, I knew who Alexander Dugin was. I did not know who Daria Dugina was. I thought it was pretty awful in general to target or hurt someone's child based on what their father or parent did. That being said, it seems like politically she was very much in line with Alexander Dugin, and for a Russian opposition, potentially could have also been a target, although it doesn't sound like she was the primary target in this particular instance. Super brazen. I'm curious as to how it all plays out. We know that actually Alexander Dugin and his daughter and other far-right commentators in Russia who were still allowed on television have been arguing that Russia has not been forceful enough in the war in Ukraine, that they haven't basically been, I mean, God, what's the next step? Like nuclear warheads? That they need to win this thing outright, and that it is very important to the Russian project. But that's gonna be crazy. Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, this situation with the daughter, like the guy Alexander, I'm bad with Russian, so I'm not gonna butcher the last name, but he was as far back as 2014 calling for the liberation of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions that were kind of used as the catalyst or Putin's excuse for invading this time around 2022 to liberate those regions from Ukrainian nationalists, is what they're claiming to say. He is part of, at least from what we can tell from far sites, he's part of this inner circle of Putin that is trying to convince him that he is what stands against the Western power overall. And so he needs to go on to these, imperial expansion missions to be able to shore up power against the United States. In reality, what I think this might actually be a sign of is that Putin and his allies have tried to do as good of a job as possible to make the effects of the invasion of Ukraine not felt or even recognized that much domestically, because there were an outcry of protests in the beginning. The police quickly shot that down. They've been trying to tamp that down, but as sanctions have drawn on, the war has drawn on, and you've had reminders of it hitting close to home like this. This was just outside of Moscow, the capital city. And right. I think it's going to be harder for Putin to be able to run away from this from the public. I mean, Putin's like, it's still very much an authoritarian state in Russia, but I think the Russian people are very wary of Putin and very wary of this war if given a chance to actually speak out about it.
Right, I mean, and it shows that like the opposition can get to the far right, I mean, I'm not advocating violence. I think this is very heinous. But at the same time, it shows that it's not just Putin's world, right? And there are other people willing to commit acts of violence for their political aims as well. So we will see, but the fallout, I'm sure, is going to come down on the Russian people, like you're saying, and any dissidents, because this is a hit on the right. And I don't know how long they're gonna let that stand for. But what else is new?
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.